Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To some of you and peace out to the rest of you. You know who it is and what to press and why. I want to get straight to this, and I don't want to take too long, but I got that preacher's blood and causes me to always take a long time with these things. In my last recording, I was very pessimistic, and I still am. I don't see a future for the most part, for the bulk of us. Now, I also said yesterday in a recording with the Roger Report of the Habitual Line Steppers, shout out to him, that I don't really think there's much that we brothers can do to get the respect of black women in the West. Trying to get the respect will cause us to lose it. Pretty much anything we do. What it would take would be for us, like I've said before, to be Superman. We would have to be bulletproof, able to fly faster than speeding bullets, more powerful than locomotives, pretty much invulnerable to the retaliations of the white supremacist system they want us to dismantle while they participate in it. That's not going to work. Anything short of that is not going to work. They're pretty much waiting for Superman, like the title of a book about the failing school system in America said, Waiting for Superman. And the title, I think that was made into a documentary, and maybe I need to watch that one. I'm not sure, but I'm not going to teach in the U.S. again until things are fixed and I didn't have to fix them. So what I'm pretty much saying is we got to be Superman for them to respect us again. We would have to manage to just, when they come and show up and tell us to put the handcuffs on, we would have to be able to say, no, I'm not doing it. And when they shoot us, the bullets would have to bounce off and we'd have to break out of the handcuffs, walk up to the prisons, yank the doors off with our bare hands, yank off the gates, have the bullets bounce off of us when the guards shoot us from the guard towers, walk into the cell blocks, bust them out, make them invisible and bulletproof like us. Invincible, and bulletproof like us. We pretty much have to do this for them to respect us while they remain as they are. Bleeding 5 times a day. Fickle, emotional, rebellious. And the bad ones would insist on having first dibs on the good men. Because the good sisters are out there, but they've been silenced. So that's not going to work. But I titled this A Possible Exception to Our Doom, did I not? So I'm going to tell you straight away that the exception I'm talking about is the solution to the problem for black folks, and that is Islam. But I'm going to ask you, like I've said before, to do the research on your own. Don't take my word for it. But I'm also going to tell you this. Before you turn this thing off, hear me out to the end and then make a decision. I'm going to give you something new at this point. 2 things that are new. Number 1, I'm willing to go ahead and debate this with some of you. If you want to, and we can schedule it ahead of time, I'll do so. My terms and conditions are actually quite a few, but my first 3 are, number 1, you will not insult God. Number 2, you will not insult any prophet. You will not insult any prophet mentioned in the Quran. You can debate. You can even try to figure out if they were prophets or not, but you will not insult them. Number 3, we will take turns talking. I will only interrupt if there's an emergency, like someone's at my door, I'm going to answer it, or if I didn't hear something and I need you to repeat it just to make sure I heard you correctly, or you're Borg and I got to tell you the sound's unclear, so I may need you to repeat, things like that. Outside of that, I'm not going to interrupt you just because I have a different take on it. I'm going to let you finish, and you're going to let me finish. You start with the interruption, and especially the nigga interruptions, operationally defined faith, brother, stuff like that. Every second word I say, you want me to define it, we're not done. We're not talking anymore. We're done. You insult the prophet, we're done. Even if you become Muslim later, we're not going to talk. If you insult God, we're done. But if you become Muslim later, then we can talk, because God is alive to forgive you if you insult him. The prophets are not alive to forgive you if you insult them. Not just Muhammad, peace be to him. If you insult Jesus or Moses, as an example, or Daniel, or Lot, or Adam, you insult them, the conversation's over, the debate's over. I automatically won if you have to resort to that, because I'm not going to insult those that are important to your faith. Even if I debate their status as prophets or gods, I'm not going to just insult them. Not doing it. Now, this being said, When I say that this is the solution, there is one other thing that we're going to have to couple with it. And it is actually a part of Islam anyway, but it is something we're going to have to give an extra focus because our conditions demand it. Because if there's going to be a subsection of Black Americans and even other Black people that are going to make it, it's going to be those that are Muslims, and I'll tell you why. Number one, if you dream of Black unity, African unity, then let me tell you that you're going to see that most often between the Muslims. You want to see Black international marriages, you're going to see that most often with the Muslims. Number one, you're going to see that with, in the UK, you can ask those if you're in the UK, you know how often a Jamaican convert marries somebody from Africa. You've seen how this happens. It's quite common, actually. Or any Caribbean convert turns around and marries somebody from the motherland. Now, you can barely get Caribbean and African people in the UK to hang out together for long stretches at a time, unless, of course, the younger ones. But you have seen, those of you in the UK who have also spent time with Muslims that are Black have seen these international marriages, but they're still intra-racial. You've seen that happen. And they actually can get along quite well. They can do it. You want to see a Tanzanian and a Sudanese get along well in a marriage, the chances are they're Muslim anyway. They don't have any grudge and any beef between them in the first place. They don't even have the rivalry that Nigeria and Ghana has, which is a friendly one. Who has the best jollof rice? They don't even have that. So you want to see something like this, you're going to see it with the Muslims. That's the first thing you need to understand. So if you are African American and you under the sound of my voice, or if you are from any other Black nation in the Americas or any other Black community in the Americas, and you accept Islam, the next thing to do is a part of the religion anyway. And that is, once you've established, you've made prayer a habit, you're going to hold to the prayer because you have to in order to remain Muslim anyway. Start spending time with Muslim communities that are also Black, and you will see how it is that even with the dysfunction that any community can have, the community still remains a functional community despite individual dysfunction at times. And that is because, simply put, the definition of right and wrong remains intact. Somebody in that community has a baby out of wedlock, male or female. That's not a part of the culture per se. It's not considered an okay or a right thing to do. It is a human error. It's wrong. That's what happens. So you'll see that where there is, in fact, dysfunction, that's not part of the culture. It's never accepted as such. Hang around Ethiopian Muslims, if one of them has a son that's involved in gangs and stuff like that, that doesn't mean that it becomes a part of the culture. It means that the son is wayward. The culture is still intact. You don't need that gang stuff in amongst them. It's not necessary. Do you see where I'm going with this? So you will then be able to see how it is that they function cohesively when they have to deal with outside things, even if they disagree with each other. How do they handle internal disagreements? They have them. They just handle them. And most of us would know how that is anyway, because we've said how we should handle internal disagreements, not in front of other people. Fair enough. So the real deal as to why many of us don't want to take it. And again, I'm asking you to hear me out before you stop listening. The real deal as to why many of us are afraid to accept this, and we are afraid. It's not that we can't believe that there's only one God and that Muhammad ibn Abdullah is the last of his slave servants, the last of his messengers and prophets. That's not the reason. We find an easy time believing it. I mean, we swear up and down Muhammad is Black anyway, peace be to him. We swear that all the prophets were Black. And while the Quran does not physically describe all of them, the fact is that there are a few of them, key ones, that are described as such. Jesus was not necessarily called Black, but the way his hair is, in the Hadith is described as such that we would consider him Black by virtue of his hair alone. Muhammad, peace be to him, apparently he had the majority Abyssinian ancestry, and so did Umar. May Allah be pleased with him. So if we're saying that these prophets and their companions were largely Black, we don't have a hard time believing that they could be prophets as long as there's a God to send prophets. That's not the issue, if we're really honest about it. The logic is there. See, what it is this. We Black folks have we have a problem finding a middle path between two extremes. And that's why extremes are always offered to us. It's to train us to think dichotomously so that we won't think independently of a third and middle path in between the two extremes we're offered. So, I mean, it works politically. Hillary or Trump. Hillary Clinton or Trump. As an example now, it's Biden or Trump, right? So at the end of the day, they always offer us dichotomies. But in this faith, you actually have to take a middle ground, and that therein lies the religion itself. It's the middle ground. So instead of deciding, okay, celibacy or fornication, it's neither one. It's marriage, and you're not required to be, as a guy, you're not required to be rich to get married. That's not a requirement in the religion. You don't even have to be in your middle 20s. You can marry in your early 20s. Technically, you're allowed, religiously speaking, you can marry at 17. Now, you do have to have enough, you do have to have a way to feed the family, but you're not required to be wealthy. You're not even required to be middle class. It's okay to be poor and still get married. That's up to her. And if all the women are going to sit up here and say that, nope, you got to be rich, then most of the women are going to be by themselves, and it's not your fault. So there's that middle ground. That's just one example. But let's be honest with ourselves now. Most of us are fearful of taking this because we've had bad experiences with Christianity, and also something else is at play here too. In addition to that, we've had a problem with self-discipline, but we think the problem is greater than what it actually was. See, as an example, many of us have gone long stretches of time without drinking, but we think we can't go without drinking. We've gone long stretches of time without fornicating, but we think we just got to have it. We've gone long stretches of time without even backbiting and talking bad about someone, but we think we just got to talk bad about someone, get it off our chest. And we've practiced these things in isolation, but what happens if we combine them? If you can combine these things, you can do it. We think that we can't get up early in the morning for the first prayer, but we've gotten up early in the morning before the sun comes up to go to work because there's money attached to it. This is where, and we don't realize this, but if we can put these things into practice in a combination with each other, then we can practice the self-discipline that is necessary. And therefore, the only question then is, can you believe the doctrine or not? And most of us already can believe that too. And we're aware that we can believe it. So many of us think that we're going to come into this, and then after we've accepted it and we're committed, somebody's going to come along and somehow prove to us with an authentic hadith or some verse out of the Quran that we're inferior and we have to accept being a status at the back of the camel. And what I'm telling you is that's not going to happen. It's never happened yet. It's never going to happen. It is never part of the religion that black is at the bottom. That's never been the case. People tend to forget it. Non-black folks tend to forget that we're equal, but then again, that's because they forget there is no religious sanction on this, and even dumb Muslims are clear about it. And you have every right to fight back when someone tries to come to you with that BS. That's in the faith. The question is really the self-discipline. It's not even about can we. I thought it was. It's about will we practice that self-discipline? Will we open up and start hanging around black folks from other backgrounds to see how they actually act as communities and learn from them? And believe you me, if you're there and you're willing to learn from them, they will be willing to learn from you as well. As long as it's an exchange of information, they'll be willing to. I know because I spent a lot of my adult life hanging out with black folks from everywhere. Any and everywhere they showed up. I didn't only hang around. Now, when I was in my hometown, most of us were from the U.S., but when I got to Atlanta, there were plenty of black folks from everywhere, and I was willing to hang around any of them, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the dysfunctions we share and about what we can learn from them that'll help, and vice versa, too. And I'm going to tell you this last thing before I go. They keep on winning with these new agendas because we don't have the guidance system that I'm promoting. The BLM organization, not the movement or the protesters, but the BLM organization has come out and they've changed their call in the streets to what they've already had on their website in the past few days. They've had it on the website for years. Past few days, they put that same call out on the streets. Stop and think about this for a second. Why were they able to pull this off? Fortunately, many of us are pushing back against it and saying, no, you're not going to use the bodies of heterosexual black men to start momentum and then turn around and transfer that momentum to defend only and strictly black folks that are not heteronormative and not cisgender. Only them. Use it to then defend only and exclusively black folks of some sort of gender bend. No. We've collectively pushed back. That's good. See, we collectively pushed back when white folks tried the deflection tactic. What about black on black crime? We said that gets prosecuted. At the very least, it gets investigated. It certainly gets prosecuted if it's anywhere near solved, and then it's sentenced. It's punished. That's the difference. If I shoot Junebug, I'm going to prison. If Junebug shoots me, he's going to prison unless one of us is slick enough to not get caught somehow, and most of us ain't that slick. Prisons are full of those of us that thought we were just too slick to get caught. So most of us outside of prison know that you're going to get caught and go to prison. Okay, so that's taken care of. No more, what about black on black crime as a deflection? Well, they're turning around now and they're taking a type of black on black crime that by necessity must be very rare. Whenever the victim is of some sort of gender bending lifestyle, then they want to take that black on black crime and make it an exception. But that must by necessity be exceptionally rare because of the population of black folks that are into the gender bending stuff anyway, being so rare. So if they're so rare and very few of them are victims of black on black crime, then how many cases would there be where one of them specifically is a victim of black on black crime? You got to go through two rare funnels in order for them to now promote you and defend you. You got to bend the gender. Now you're in a minority again. And you got to be black first, which is a minority. Then you got to bend the gender, which is another minority, numerically speaking. Then you got to become a victim of a crime perpetuated by somebody black, which puts you in another minority category. So you got to be three minorities in order for them to now come out and defend you openly, unequivocally, after they said that they're not going to take black on black crime as a deflection. The reason they were able to do that is because we don't have the guidance system to say, you know what, we're not sanctioning murder of them, but you're not going to turn around and promote that lifestyle either. So what I'm going to say about this is that many of us are unaware of this, but see, as I'm saying, you're going to have to get with some other black folk too. A lot of you are like, ADOS, shut the shuck up. I don't want to hear that. I'm ADOS. I don't need no other black folks. It's okay to have ADOS as a distinction when you are talking about who owes who reparations, as I've said before. But see, distinction is different from division. And I'm going to tell you now, when Yvette Carnell came up with the distinction, she knew damn well that we were going to take it and run with it as a division. That's why she put it out there. And our dumbasses fell for it. And that's what we're doing now. A lot of us. We're using ADOS as a division instead of a distinction for a political and practical purpose. Shuck that fit. Yvette Carnell came up with it for one reason why she wanted the division was because Yvette Carnell is a carpet muncher. And she's into other women. And she's into, more specifically, a white woman. Yvette Carnell knows that the one distinction between Black America and the rest of the black world, Caribbean, Latin American, or the continent, or even Melanesia, the major distinction is the women's attitude towards booty busting and gender bending business. That's it. Homosexuality is accepted by African American women, not Black Jamaican women or Bayesian women. Maybe to a certain extent, Afro-Latino women, maybe, but it's not really promoted. It's more so just like, okay, you're that way. Yep. Nice to meet you. Bye. More like that. But you get into, you get into them Black Caribbean nations, no. And you get into the continent, no. Even if they don't beat them, they don't tolerate that stuff. And they're not going to. They don't feel like they have to. In Liberia, they'll leave you alone for the most part, from what I've heard, but you better not. You better leave them alone too. In Sierra Leone, they'll keep an eye on you to make sure that you're not also into kids for the most part. And they'll just ostracize you and leave you be. But the minute you start showing inclinations towards children, they're going to take a tire and throw it around your neck, light it up, flame on. But they don't like that nasty booty business in the first place. And they don't have to. It's our land. And it was not known there before a certain period of a turbulent period in our history. So what I'm getting at is that Yvette Carnell knows this, and that's why she came up with this. She said, well, guess who owes us reparations? And she was right about that. But she knew that too many of us were going to take this and be like, yeah, you niggas from Africa hold your own nuts. And we did it. And now many of us that were the most militant are now also upholding specifically the only sister on the planet, the Western sister, that will promote this kind of stuff, even to their own detriment. We have a guidance system that could have prevented all of this from the very beginning, and that's the one that I just promoted to you. Thank you for listening. Don't take my word for it, do the research. But thank you for listening from the beginning to the end before you make a decision. It is not our job, again, to be Superman just to get Lois Lane's respect and admiration. But there is a way out, and that's the one I just told you about. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Black heart, black mind, blackout, and black heterosexual male power again, specifically because our enemies don't like it.